I'm glad to welcome Lynn Holland to the team of Payments Geeks here at Modo Payments. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, Lynn has learned in his journey as a payments geek of several decades. And in particular, having spent the last 15 years at ACI, he's seen a number of different perspectives on payments, from a bank perspective, a merchant perspective, network perspective, processor perspective. But I think today we'll probably zero in on the different issues that you've encountered over the course of that time for merchants. But Lynn, welcome, first of all, and thanks for joining us. I'll spend just a moment introducing myself. I'm Bruce Parker. I'm the founder and CEO of Modo, and Modo is a bank-grade payment stack. Operates in the cloud, and we serve primarily large enterprise clients, or the Global 2000. We're made up of payment geeks, as I mentioned to you, and we come from places like ACI and FIS, some other companies that you may or may not have heard of, S2 Systems and eFunds, which now are part of those two organizations. Klarna and others are actually on the list as well. But Lynn, why don't I just turn it over to you now and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and some of your experience.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So I'm Lynn Holland. Like Bruce said, I've been in the payments business for 25 plus years. You stop counting at 25, it just goes up from there. I started with a small software company in Dallas called Shared Financial Systems, and I now return working with Modo to another small software solution provider based in Dallas, Texas. When I had the opportunity to join Modo, I jumped at it. I've worked with Bruce for a number of years in previous positions, and was really excited about some of the things Modo was doing and can accomplish as we move forward.
Perfect. Well, and people will probably notice you have a much cooler background because yours is spinning as well. So we won't get into the details of why I couldn't figure out how to get mine to spin as well. But I think, Lynn, for everybody kind of watching at home, the key question would be, why did you choose to join? I mean, I understand and appreciate the relationship that we've enjoyed over many, many years, but I imagine there's more to it than just my winsome personality and quite honestly, all around great humor.
Well, I think we're going to talk a lot about some of the underlying reasons and some of the ways that I think Modo's going to solve some of the problems in the industry. But when I joined ACI about 15 years ago, the small company I was with in Dallas got acquired by ACI, and they asked me to take on building and managing product. A new role for me. And over the last few years, I really was focused on managing not only the product, but the whole P&L for the merchant portfolio at ACI. And then most recently working in the overall strategy and architecture group for the entire organization, working for this chief product officer. I saw a lot of the pain points, not only that the merchants have, but payment providers have, trying to respond to some of the drivers we're going to talk about in just a moment on this thing. I think it all comes down to, very simply, Modo's got great tech, great people, and the desire to solve some of these problems that have been around in our industry as it's evolved the last few years.
Perfect. Well, let's keep moving along and let's jump into exactly that. Those merchant pains that you've seen in your travels, some of the challenges that are out there, maybe some of the context for how those challenges are a little bit more pressing given the current situation, the current crisis. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit and understand, in particular, what are you seeing in terms of people's payment stacks out there, what they have today and what they wish they had tomorrow?
Well, I think, Bruce, when it comes down to the pain points a merchant's experiencing and has been experiencing, that really drives not only where their payment stacks are today, but where they see the pressure to take them. What a merchant's payment stack is, how they manage payments varies so much from what vertical they're in. Are they a quick serve restaurant? Are they an online hard goods retailer? reseller? Are they in the travel business? How big are they? Where are they located? How many countries do they want to do business in today, tomorrow? But what all of those customers have and all those merchants have in common are the pressures to change and evolve. With the advent of the COVID, it's really brought to an acceleration of some of those pain points that's had merchants under the gun today. The main one is we're seeing a dramatic change accelerated now with COVID of customer journeys. In the past, the big thing that most physical retailers were working on were online payments to in-store pickups. Well, that's just gone from a small part of their business now to curbside delivery, contactless delivery, contactless curbside. It's just exploded. And also in many verticals, you're now working with a new set of third parties, whether it's DoorDash or any of the other number of startups in that segment, helping merchants, food service restaurants get their food, their meals to their customers. The pressure increases. And not only is it acceleration in the customer journey and the change in consumer behavior, but with those customer journeys changes, they're looking to pay differently. Instead of presenting a credit card, handing it to a cashier, or inserting it themselves, we're paying through wallet and stored credentials before we ever arrive at to pick up our goods or services or have them delivered. And even as we think about traditional face-to-face merchandising and sales, as we come out of COVID and things start to reopen and we see consumers coming back to the stores and coming out of their shelves, it's not going to be the same, at least for a while. So merchants are now under the pressure of how do I reorganize my checkout lanes? How do I change my customer service access points? So all of those pressures driven by consumer behavior. And so now you lay that on top of the underlying pain that we were feeling in the industry around security. How do I secure from data breaches? So I've spent money hardening my network. I've spent money on implementing point-to-point encryption, tokenization. I've started moving EMV and EMV acceptance, contact and contactless out to try and make sure I'm managing my risk and securing consumers' data. It just never stops. And then it's online. I've now got to hold credentials, secure credentials. I've got to implement hosted payment page, iframe, iFields, in-app security, denial of service attacks on my websites. I've got to sell through third-party websites. Many merchants sell not just in an Amazon marketplace, but they may be selling in the travel business through many of the load providers and the other travel websites. So the complexity that's being driven on top of consumers changing just has been major the last few years, and it's not going to slow down. I think, we've seen PCI, we've seen EMV, we've seen the Durbin Amendment to the Dodd-Frank Act in the U.S., we've seen GDPR, open banking, driving regulations in the UK and the EU. I don't think there's any reason to not expect other real disruptors to come. So with that, payments are at the core and being driven by these, it's not going to stop. Costs go up, risk groups get bigger, IT organizations get bigger, treasury struggles, store ops struggles, payment ops struggles. I think that's not going to change. It's where we are.
Interesting. So it sounds like a lot of those things, other than the change in the channel mix, were really with us for a long time, but not necessarily easy to address, and maybe, quite honestly, not necessarily prioritized in the same way. The security, obviously, is sort of a must-have, but some of the investments in channels it sounds like went from not worst to first, but went from not quite first to top of mind as part of the crisis. But other than that, a lot of what you're talking about, particularly the acronym SOUP around security and compliance, that's been around for a long time. These are not brand new. These aren't new as of February in any case.
The one thing I would say about that, Bruce, is that back when we started with PCI 15 plus years ago, maybe close to 20 now, it hasn't gotten easier. It's only gotten continued to change, evolve, and got harder, more expensive almost every year. And then you layer on the continued growth in regulation and compliance, AML now, all of those kind of things. It just gets more complex.
Interesting. Well, obviously, we don't want to start talking through all of these challenges and all of these struggles without starting to address some of them. We want to give people a little hope here. And of course, we've set up this webinar precisely so we can tell you a little bit about what Modo's up to. But it's almost unfair for me to sort of jump in. You've got the freshest eyes. You're the most recent here. I would love for you to kind of walk through from your perspective how you see what Modo does, even facing off against any of those items that we just talked about. Some of them I think are probably right in Modo's wheelhouse. Others of them may not be as much, but love to hear that from you. I think everybody else would too.
So I think I'll start with saying over my career in payments, I've worked on, managed, or been involved with most of the commercial payment platforms that are out there today, either as a user, as an installer, as a product manager, as a product owner, as a developer. And I think when I look at Modo, and I sort of said it with the great tech at the start, but there are a couple things I think Modo's done right and differently than the products that have come before and that are prevalent in the industry today with some of our competitors. First, I said good technology. Well, Modo's technology base was built around the concept of cloud computing. Rapid development model, so agile. The whole company has never been anything else. It's never had the transition from waterfall to agile. It was developed and envisioned as a rapid agile team. The development model, from the languages to the third-party tools, stacks, are current and really provide significant time to market. Where other payment products and service providers out there today are trying to disassemble their current products to try to address things like containerization, microservices, cluster/Kubernetes deployment models to support DevOps with an underlying cloud security framework. It's in Modo's DNA. It's the way the company was built. It's the way the technology was architected and is deployed and managed. Now, can other companies get there? Yes, I think you're going to see a struggle to take advantage of the cloud. So as merchants and banks and third-party payment service providers look to Azure, they look to AWS, they look to IBM Cloud to help them drive scale, stability, broaden their global footprint. Having a product that can work with that goal is key, and one that was sort of built around that versus shoehorned into the DevOps and the cloud deployment model is going to be critical for long-term success. The other thing that is different / almost revolutionary is the need for orchestration. We talked about the complexity of customer journeys, some of those other things, the pain points that we just talked about. But the ability of Modo to orchestrate payments is critical. The days of a dial-up card swipe terminal transaction being over in 30 to 45 seconds are done. Transactions live for hours, for days, for multiple business cycles today. To take a single online order, you may need to do a device ID, call out to a third party to get a device ID to make sure this is Bruce in Richardson, Texas, versus someone setting in some country in Central Asia or Europe spoofing Bruce. I need to check it for fraud. The device ID came back questionable. Maybe I need to check it for fraud. Did I do a fraud screen? Have I seen this address before? Do I know this email, this phone number? It's over $5,000. I need to do an AML. And because of all this, I'm going to go out to the issuer and do a 3DS authentication to help me manage my risk on it. Oh, and the person wants to pay in a 2-year service plan, or they may want to pay with Ideal or Sofort or any of the other emerging local and regional immediate payment schemes. Oh, and I need to give loyalty points, and it seems to go on and on, but I'm going to end with, and then I don't have all the items to ship, so I've got to have multiple settlements, potentially a reauth, and potentially 4 or 5 interaction with my fulfillment system. Maybe it's in-house, maybe it's a third party. That's just to do and fulfill a single order. So with those kind of complexities, and then you've got to also manage that I'm delivering it, or I'm shipping it, or I'm allowing the customer to pick up it. The ability to orchestrate is critical. Modo can do that. And the reason why is, I think, one of the most important things, and I hope the folks on the call today really see, and if they take one thing away, it's the concept of coin. The Modo architecture is built around coin. Bruce, you can chime in if you want to talk about the origination of the name. It predates me, but it is without a doubt a very unique approach. It embeds an industrial strength, high throughput, scalable ledgering system, an account system as the nerve center of managing the life cycle of the payments. The coin manages the state of a payment, drives its process through the life cycle of the payment from end to end, from authorization through settlement to exception and customer service. It really is the nerve center of managing and assuring the quality of a payment being processed. The key thing that I think that really, as a payments geek for all these years, is as a user of Modo, I can see how many orders I've taken. How many payments do I have? Do they balance? Have I gotten paid for all the orders that is in the queue to fulfill and ship? And then driving into the payments, what are the payments? Are they card? Are they gift card, closed loop? Are they my third party private label card? Are they immediate payments that are going to be cleared? Are they ACH, subscription recurring? And not only how do they break down, but where are they? What part's settled? What part hasn't settled? What do I think my fees are going to be? What were my fees? And understanding that, along with the state of where a payment is in the process of being fulfilled, completed, and booked, it's unheard of. Most payment platforms out there today are many times they run on proprietary platforms, hardware platforms, or on proprietary code bases. Best case, you get a view to yesterday's data today. With Modo, you can see what's going on now, and it gives folks, whether it's treasury, payment ops, store ops, hopefully the ability to see real time is going to give them the ability to turn the trends and analysis and reports they get next day, next week, next into the quarter into actionable intelligence. something that I can make a decision of addressing a decline rate with one provider by rolling my traffic to another provider. Expecting interchange qualification to look like this, but it's not. It's coming back different. Why? And seeing it within a day or an hour as opposed to waiting for that monthly net settlement to come in where you really see a discrepancy in your interchange costs. You get less money at the end of the month than you were expecting. You don't want that to happen as a merchant. So being able to have not only a transaction system that's going to ensure the integrity of your transactions, but one that you can see the states and let it affect your business decisions. I think to me that is not only is a true differentiator for Modo, it's a true differentiator in the market today.
Wonderful. I appreciate all of that. Yeah, I think that, the net summary is that oftentimes in payments, for whatever reason, we've distinguished between what we need to do from a data perspective to move a transaction along, to move a payment along, and really we only focus on that part of the journey up into the moment that the transaction has been completed. If we're talking about cards, we could call it capture. We could also talk about that as a payments instruction. Sort of depends on where you're from and what payment type you're talking about, what term you end up using. But that's really, it's kind of half the journey of, okay, well, how are we going to manage this data up until the point when I know I've got a good payment? It's the things that happen afterwards. It's the things that happen during settlement. It's the things that happen later during reconciliation that end up oftentimes driving a lot of quality problems, just exactly like you were talking about with interchange, but then also relate to the money. Like at the end of the day, a payment is about the movement of money, and I think it's just sort of ironic that you would describe it as a new concept to have ledgering or have accounting be front and center when we're talking about payments, because it's all about moving money in any case. So one thing, just to the folks who are live with us right now, you're welcome to fire in a question. I think there's a Q&A button that you can push, and we'll take any of your questions as you come up with those. But maybe just before we do that, in terms of, we were talking about the coin and how we perform orchestration and some of the things that we're tying together in a different way. Do you mind just spending a moment, just connect the dots for folks just a little bit on, okay, we were talking a bunch about some pain points, the advent of new channels, the disruption of customer journeys, the EIEIO acronym soup of all the compliance and security stuff. What does the one have to do with the other? What is being in the cloud and a different approach to thinking about the life cycle of data and funds flow mean to those problems? Is it sort of near? Is it a direct hit? How does it apply? How do those two things connect to one another?
I think it comes down to control. Today, I think merchants feel like in many cases they are boxed in. They have to, because of either the architecture of their payment system, the fact that the processor working today, or their third party that they have the banking arrangement with offers a service that does just one thing, that they really don't have the ability to change. So the impact goes back to the beginning of the conversation with customer journeys. If I can't really make my payment system support how my customer wants to do business with me and buy, it's going to make it very hard for me to compete. So it's control. And the cloud comes down to two things. One is we've seen merchants have to invest in data centers and multiple data centers to support payments when they run them in-house. We've seen them have to make huge amounts of investments in their stores via new terminals, new software. The convenience and oil and gas industry is going through the EMV right now for later this year compliance. So they've been putting billion-dollar investments there, but they still haven't been able to, let's say, really hook together the website or their in-app to give them a picture of what they're doing. Or maybe they can't get their volumes aggregated so they can maybe drive some economy of scale.
Hmm.
Or on the website, the customer does X, and in the app, it's Y. And I don't have the ability to give them a consistent picture of me as a merchant of my brand. So control, and then the flexibility to change.
That's interesting.
Your fraud provider today may not be the better fraud provider in a year. And if one thing is changing, it's the ability to integrate with third parties is becoming not only more important, but with companies like Modo and some of the others out there, it's getting easier.
Yeah, in fact, that's how we describe ourselves, as reducing friction in payments for precisely those kinds of integrations, for those kinds of interactions with third parties. It's interesting as you talk about that. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about alternative payment methods. And for those who probably wouldn't know, in the Wayback Machine, as Modo was getting originally started a number of years ago, we were really, really focused at that time on different forms of payment, different methods of payment, specifically different methods of payment that probably involve phones. And I'm just curious, we're off script entirely, but I'm just curious, Lynn, what your thoughts are in terms of, okay, we've had the crisis, we've had all these pressures, they're now going to have to, escape somehow. I think we may be, to your point, starting to see a shift of infrastructure to new things, to things in the cloud, to things that are modern in a different way than we have for a decade or more. I mean, it's been a long time since people have made big changes in some of these systems, and they seem to be ready and open to doing so now, or at least that's what it appears to us as we're getting invited to talk to people. What do you see, if you look in your crystal ball, what other things besides the customer journeys and dealing with sort of this mess that we've had for a while, do you see anything brand new happening? In particular, anything brand new that gets unlocked or gets done differently based on a new reliance on phones, a new type of flow of funds? And I'll just lead the witness a little bit and tell you that my personal opinion is that, timing is everything. And I think this crisis, getting to something that's more contactless, which of course can be, a dip or a tap with a card, but it also could be something on a device that I'm perfectly comfortable with from a bugs or germs or whatever perspective. I think we may see a new opening or a new door towards the open banking, the real-time payments, the faster payments. I know you touched on that, but to me, if I had to bet, like, what one payment method benefits unusually from the set of things that have happened so far in 2020, I would put my money on real-time payments on a global basis.
Yeah, I would concur. When you think about the device really opens it up. The phone builds in authentication protocols, security protocols. You can hold payment credentials securely behind multiple layered firewalls. So you can solve that security and authentication piece. So if a merchant knows that I'm in the app and it is truly Lynn Holland wanting to make this purchase, and they know that my credentials have passed the test and I've used them before, the ability to change and facilitate the consumer using not just ACH, near real-time ACH, but now real-time payments is really critical. If a merchant can manage the risk and a merchant can make sure that he doesn't change or impact the customer's experience in buying, making it frictionless. And as those two get solved, and they're being solved, and Modo's working to solve them, you're going to see merchants start empowering the consumer to pay differently. And, with certain regulations, open banking in the U.S., we had the Dodd-Frank Act and the Durbin Amendment specifically that allows merchants to incent customers to pay in a certain way, and consumers. And they aren't forced to just throw up everything you can pay with and let you just choose. So as a merchant, I like loyalty points, but I also might like a 1% discount to use real-time payments or something like that. So all of the sort of levers are, they're getting longer. So the leverage is getting bigger for the merchant in some of those things. So I think real-time payments. The only thing I think will be interesting to see is real-time payments are so either country specific or regional specific. In a big market like the U.S., that's okay. Merchants can make that investment, but it makes it a little bit harder, and it requires, again, a larger business network to take the different faster pay, immediate pay in multiple countries. The other thing I would say that I think is changing to drive real-time payments was a customer I worked with that, as merchants go, it's a huge manufacturer, but as their direct sales side go, it's not huge, but they're in 27 countries. They have 18 acquirers. They support 12 alternative payment types and local payment types. And then they've got a website and they've got an app, and their website is up and operating in those same set of countries. And they've got 260 flagship stores across the world.
Wow.
They have a level of complexity that's equal to the biggest merchants, but they have to find a way of solving it at a cost structure and infrastructure. And the only way they can do that is through cloud and using third parties to get that done. And we can help enable them to drive that third party orchestration.
Well, Mr. Holland, thank you for today. Thank you for joining Modo. Thank you for a couple of decades of a friendship, which now we carry forward into the marketplace and go do some more payment geeking together, which I'm really, really excited about. Thanks for all the above. Thanks for everybody who joined us here today. Obviously, we'd be delighted to engage with you. Feel free to reach out. There's a contact us on the website, and then also you just fire us an email. I'm Bruce at modopayments.com. That's all for today. Lynn, again, thank you, and thanks for joining us and becoming a Modonaut.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.